Hello, it's Matt Linklater. I've been featured in Inc. magazine on ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC. My mission is to change the financial landscape of America. So when you think about it as a leader, you have to push your team's envelope each and every day. You have to elevate their standard. This is really about how do you maximize your time. So how do you do it within your business? How do you figure out who your target market is? And ultimately you want to narrow that focus, don't you? So how do you push beyond your emotions and kind of visualize your success? And you have to be congruent, one of thought, one of word, and one of action. The quality of your life is found in the rituals that you keep. The quality in your business is found in the rituals that you keep for your business. Axie, say I can.
I can.
Say I must.
I must.
Say I am.
I am.
Say Axie Unstoppable.
Stop.
So, I categorize myself as an entrepreneur and honestly a salesperson. But really, what drives me? This is pretty cool. I think, everybody has their trials and tribulations in life, and I'm going to share with you kind of what makes me. But I had the greatest upbringing that you could ever imagine. And why is because I had 3 older brothers, a dad, and a mom, like everybody does. But I had 3 older brothers that kicked my butt every day. And some probably would say, they wouldn't have wanted to grow up this way, but to my dad and my brothers, like anything you did was never good enough. And yeah, as a kid, that was a lot of stress on you, but it kind of always pushed you to want to do more and want to do better. And one of my favorite stories to tell is when I was in high school, I stole home in a baseball game. I don't know if you're a baseball fan or not, but not too many people ever steal home. But I stole home, and what happened was my dad was right there to tell me how I could have done it better. And I love that because every time you had a great basketball game, baseball game, whatever you did, they were always there to help you, get you better, but tell you how you did it better and push you beyond your comfort zones. And when you thought you couldn't take it anymore, my mom swooped in and actually, shared with you, hey, you're loved, everybody loves you, and you can handle more. And, why that was such a great upbringing is, when I was 10 years old, everything came crashing down. My parents decided to get divorced. And it was a 2-year knockdown, drag-out divorce. 1 week my dad was there. 1 week he wasn't there. 1 week he was there, and my mom and dad were yelling constantly. And the next week he wasn't there. And by the time I was 12, they got divorced. And everything I knew got flipped and turned upside down. And, my dad, and, I'm not going to, I don't hold any remorse to either of them, but, he forced us to move out of our house. And so we had to move into a much smaller house. Now I was living with only my mom, who's just an awesome lady. She was a cashier at a grocery store. So she didn't have the monetary ability to raise 4 boys, and 2 of my brothers were growing older. And but everything was flipped upside down, and during that time our hot water got turned off, and just experienced that. I kind of always say this is, I only got 1 pair of gym shoes a year, and not saying I should get more or less than that. It was just kind of a theme growing up that's all I needed. And so I always had this in my mind, though, that I wanted to earn more and make more. And so I came out of college thinking, how do I make $100,000? I want to be self-sufficient. I want to be financial free. I want to create that freedom for myself. And so how do I make $100,000? And I used to think of $10,000 a month, and it used to bring tears to my eyes. And within 2 years after college, I was able to fulfill that goal, and I was making, multiple 6 figures. And so then, I wanted to go out into the entrepreneur world, and that's a lot about what we're going to talk about today. Is so in about 2006, I started buying rental properties, and we all know how that probably turned out, right? So it didn't turn out very well. But the reason it didn't turn out very well is because I didn't have the detail that I'm going to share with you guys today. So 2008 crash hit me pretty hard. So here I was on top of the world, doing what we used to do, making multiple 6 figures, and then 2008 hit me. My real estate was crashed. I got let go of my job. There was 40% unemployment in our industry, and so then I picked myself back up, and in 2009, 2010, I started buying more houses, and I went on to my entrepreneurial dream. And the biggest thing is that level of detail and kind of managing your resources and managing your money. So you have great ideas, but how do you break it down to those small, implementable increments is what I call them, and what I'll share with you today. And so what that brings into today is, I've been in the financial world for 20 years. I worked for Allstate, AXA, and Ameriprise. And when I worked for those firms, I worked with high net worth individuals. And so I took all these different types of strategies that I had in the corporate world and brought them in and said, what if I could just go out there and bring these all to small and medium-sized businesses and create ultimately what I was lacking during 2008, and even lacking when I started my second housing company. I was learning some painful lessons that I needed to manage my money, focus more on the details. And so what we do now is we have a full-fledged, it's basically what, to give the kind of what it is to people is a tax and accounting firm. But really what we do is we provide family office services. And so really what a family office is, if you think about Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, they have a team of CPAs, financial advisors, and tax attorneys managing their money so they get the best deals no matter what they're doing. So when they're buying a house, when they're managing their money, when they're transferring it to the next generation, they have this team that's analyzing every detail. Now, we can't all have that same team. It's just cost prohibitive. But so what I was able to do is put together a team of CPAs, tax attorneys, and financial advisors and create this whole family office structure and provide this level of detail in tax and accounting for business owners. And what we find is that we can decrease taxes by an average of 35%. Another lady, we found that she was overcharged on merchant account services and put another $35,000 in her $2 million business. We get people work opportunity tax credits. So we just look at everything you're doing and comb through everything that you're doing and identify areas that you can put more money back into your business. And so that's what we do today, and that's kind of what drove me into ultimately what I do today to create this family office structure. But I think there's 4 main areas that business owners like myself struggle with, and a lot of these things are things that I've struggled with that I bring to business owners, and a lot of things I see business owners struggle with can be summed up in these really 4 things. And I'll give you the 4, and then I'll drive down into detail on each one. Number 1 is your focus. Number 2 is knowing your numbers. Number 3 is not all debt is bad debt. And number 4 is sales cures all. But number 1, let's go into what are you focusing in on each and every day. Now, I'm going to give you a book. One of the greatest books I ever read is a book called Flow by a gentleman named Csikszentmihalyi. I'm sure I'm not saying it with the proper accents and the proper accent even. But what he says is this, is that we're bombarded with information, but we can only handle a small portion of that information. So we're bombarded by 2 million bits of information, and we can only handle about 134 bits of that information. So really, when you think about your focus in life, there's an infinite amount of possibilities. But what are you focusing in on? And so let me just explain that. So you cannot not focus on something. So if I say, don't think about the loudest, reddest fire engine, what are you thinking about? The reddest, loudest fire engine, right? And so you cannot, so as a business owner and an entrepreneur, you have to have the right mindset. So are you thinking about debt or are you thinking about growth? So if you're not expanding, then you're contracting. And so Csikszentmihalyi says we're bombarded by these 2 million bits of information. And so we're really taking this in by our limbic brain. And we think we're all logical with our neocortex and our frontal cortex. But really, we're driven by our limbic brain, which neuroscientists say operates 6 seconds before we become logically aware of it. So we're driven by these kind of unconscious forces each and every day. And so really, when you look at Csikszentmihalyi, bombarded by 2 million bits of information, you can only focus on 134. There's an infinite amount of combinations that you could essentially focus in on. What are you focusing in on? And so a lot of us are driven by our cognitive biases. And so really our cognitive biases, there's a great video on YouTube that explains this. And it was a gentleman that's riding a bike. And so he switched the bearings on the bike, so when you ride the bike, that when you turn left, you go right, and when you turn right, you go left. And intellectually, that should be easy. But in practice, he couldn't do it. And so ultimately what happens is these cognitive biases, is we're taking in information, we delete, we distort, and we generalize. And we do all that on our past experiences. So think about this. Do you ever have somebody who goes from one relationship, and not you, but in your life, that goes from one relationship to the next relationship to the next relationship? They're seemingly different relationships, but from you, the observer, it's like they're replaying the same relationship over and over. And so that's how, if you think about your business startups and, your false starts in business and how much you have to keep pushing and pursuing, is we're playing over these patterns. And so really, how do we get rid of those types of patterns? Let me share with you a few things. Let me just kind of illustrate this pattern one more time, and I'll give you a couple things to change the pattern. If I had a dump truck of toothpicks, and I was going to dump 2 million toothpicks on you every second, okay? But every second you could only grab 134 of those toothpicks. And in there was red, white, and blue toothpicks, all right? I always ask the question, do you think you'd grab the red, white, and blue evenly, or do you think you'd gravitate towards one or the other? And really what it's saying is you'd gravitate towards one or the other. You'd gravitate and grab more red, or you'd gravitate towards blue, whatever was kind of in that unconscious mind. And that's what we do each and every day, is when we're bombarded with this information, we're limited by our cognitive biases, and we're grabbing these things that are supporting those cognitive biases. So, money doesn't grow on trees. You can't afford that, right? What do you think? I'm made of money? And so we're bombarded with all these types of things over our lives that are controlling us. And so you really have to interrupt that pattern. And I'm going to give you a whole system day today to interrupt that pattern. But there's two things you need to do. So we're going to give you things to change your focus with a very specific system. But there's two things. State is really, how do you change your state? When you get up on stage and do your speaking, when you put yourself in a great state, you're silky smooth. But if you're in a bad state, sometimes you can't even get a word out. And it's the same thing in business. It's the same thing with money, is seeking out opportunities. Is, are you in the right state? And so, one thing, just kind of how to put yourself in the state is, we call it priming, if you will. And there's a story of people that were given a cup of coffee. Half of the people were given a hot cup of coffee, the other half a cold cup of coffee. Then they were told to read a story. The people who drank the hot cup of coffee talked about the lead character in the story as being warm, inviting, a gentle person, a nice person. But if you drank a cold cup of coffee, that same person was cold and callous and non-inviting. And so really every day is, how do you prime your mind? And so, I meditate in the morning. I make sure I do physical activity first thing in the morning. I do, that meditation puts me in that grateful state, in the state of opportunity. And so really, how do you put yourself, and we all have different ways to do it, but you really have to put yourself in that right state, in that abundant mindset, in that abundant state, because you're driven so much by unconscious patterns. And, I am a certified hypnotist, I'm a certified NLP and all this stuff, but really what that says is that 80 to 90% of our actions are driven by our unconscious thoughts and patterns. So you really have to think about, how do I change my focus? So a couple ways is, be leery of your state. Motion creates emotion. You guys teach that. And how do you prime yourself? Whether that be through meditation, eating, and some of that motion and that physical activity. And then also focusing in on these types of strategies. And what I'm going to share with you today, really, you should look at every morning and every night before you go to bed. So number one is focus. I think that's one of the biggest things, is where is your focus? Number two is know your numbers. And on the personal side and on the business side. So on the personal side, when I say know your numbers, is this. I don't know if many people know this, but how the majority of Americans' finances break down is 35% of their income goes to pay interest. So interest on credit cards, interest on home loans, interest on car loans. 24% goes to pay taxes. The average person's effective rate is 24%, and that is just state and local taxes, not even sales tax. So if you had sales tax in there, I would say that's probably closer to even a 30%, which then, that means 60% to 70% of your money is gone to pay everything before you even get to spend it on necessities and food and things like that for your family. So really understanding your numbers and where's your money going. And that's why I'm adamant is that you got to figure out what's the right type of debt for interest, and then how do you minimize your taxes. The other thing is on businesses is, as a business owner, you need to know your numbers. So I'm out there, I'm buying some businesses, and one of the gentleman's businesses, and give you a number how the numbers should break down in this specific business, it's an accounting practice, is a third should be overhead, a third should be employee cost, and a third should be seller discretionary income, meaning their income plus their EBITDA for those of you who are the business owners. But really it's that owner discretionary cash flow should be a third. And so this one business I was buying, he didn't even realize that. Here's his CPA. He should know other people's numbers. He doesn't even know his numbers. He had 48% employee costs, and he only had 22% owner discretionary cash flow. So you have to know your numbers. So by just increasing, if you just increase your sales by 20% and decrease your cost by 12%, you drive your profit by over 60%. Now I know that's easier said than done, but there's strategies to get in line. And so when you know your numbers, you at least know where you if you know where you are and you know where you want to go, that's half the battle. So number 2 is know your numbers. Number 3 is understand debt. Not all debt is bad debt. So buying a house, bad debt. I'm not going to get into too much particulars, but you should, if you're going to be a homeowner, you should own a home and have somebody else rent it and pay your bills, because you're paying high interest, high tax, and all those types of things. So credit card debt, car loan. Well, car loan's all right. You should lease, not buy, but that's a little bit beyond here. Also, buying a house, right? So that's debt, and that's not really helping you fuel. So let me give you a couple ideas on good debt. So good debt is debt that creates income. So let's say you're going out and you buy a company. So one way to grow your company is go buy a company. So let's say you go buy $1 million company, and they have $1 million company has $250,000 say free cash flow or EBITDA. So you paid a 4x multiple, if you will. Now to service that $1 million in debt with no money down on a 10-year loan would be about $112,000 in today's environment every year, right? So that gives you over $100,000 in new revenue that you didn't have because you took out good debt. So the third thing is just understanding debt and understand how people like I know Donald Trump has had some problems in the past, but how did he get so rich? Because he understands good debt. That's really what he did. And then the last one, the fourth one, where I think most people in life and business owners go wrong is, and this is one of my biggest things, sales cures all. You have to grow your business and have to drive your revenue. So for instance, that gentleman that had 48% employee costs, it's not just cutting out the employees, he probably needs those employees to service his business. He needs to grow his revenue per client. He needs to increase his profit margin per client. And so, people, when I tell them that, sometimes when I tell them some of this, they're like, well, I never thought about that, or I don't know how to do that. So, although, I'm a tax and accounting firm and a financial advisory firm, we have business consulting because, the truth is sales and revenue cures all. So really to frame it up, the 4 things that people needs to shift is number 1, your focus. Give you just a quick story on that because of how important that is. I worked with a business owner. I had a joint venture with him. It was his business. I built an on-demand platform for him. But every one of his meetings was all about, hey, if we make no money from here to the rest of the year, our bills are paid. That was the first thing he said in every meeting. And he was a sales training company. So you would think that he should have said, hey, we got to grow, we got to hit 20% lift this year, and we're only on pace for 10. What are we going to do different? But instead, he was talking about the profit. And guess what? He's not in business anymore. So your focus is huge. So you're focusing on the revenue growth, or you're focusing on the going out of business. And it's really about, are you focusing towards what you want or away from what you don't want? And those are the unconscious patterns. Some of the things that we've worked with people and over the years is really you want to be focusing in on ultimately moving toward what you ultimately want and being pulled by that passion. So number 1, that type of focus. Number 2 is just knowing your numbers, understanding where you are each and every day. And we do that for people. Number 3 is just understanding your debt. And number 4 is understanding, hey, how do I grow my revenue? Sales cures all. So, something that I kind of utilize for everything. Whenever I want to accomplish anything, I utilize this 5-step process. And it's a heuristic. I love just kind of studying different things that I practice for a period of time so they become kind of an unconscious problem-solving way, or an unconscious type of way to kind of solve problems and maximize ultimately what I'm doing. And so really it's a 5 steps process, and here it's the 5-step process to create some wealth, and it really breaks down to a very simple kind of formula. And here it is. Number 1, what gets measured gets done. Number 2, start with the end in mind. Number 3, work backwards. Number 4, break it into actionable increments. And number 5 is use self-to-self measurement. Now let me tell you what self-to-self measurement is in business and in life, because I think it's really hard as an entrepreneur. Is we always look out there and see, all these, in the day of Instagram, we see all these guys flying on their private jets and doing all these things. And not saying you can't have that, and not saying that one day you won't have those, because I really believe if that's your desire, you can have those. But sometimes you look at that and it seems like so esoteric and far out there, right? So ultimately, a self-to-self measurement really is how do I measure myself against myself every day? So they did a study of paraplegics that were able to walk again. And these paraplegics didn't look outside and say, man, I'm never going to be able to walk again. Look at everybody walking and running. I'm never going to be able to do that. What they did is just simply said, how do I wiggle my pinky toe? How do I wiggle my next toe? How do I wiggle my big toe? How do I flex my calf? And then all of a sudden, by just using those small increments, their both legs were moving and they were able to walk again. And so really, how do you use that self-to-self measurement? And so a metaphor I use on this is simply if you were gonna do a diet, right? And so let's see the 5-step process is in a diet. So you come to me and say, Matt, I want to lose weight. Great. What gets measured gets done. How many pounds do you want to lose? Let's say you wanted to lose 144 pounds. That's great. That's measurable. Number 2, start with the end in mind. When do you want to lose this weight? 1 year. And so I think many people get lost right there. They stop. 144 pounds is so far out there, and doing a year, they just don't believe they could do it, right? So now, number 3 is you have to work backwards. How do you break it down into small increments? So 144 pounds in every month, that's 12 pounds. Every week, that's 3 pounds. So that's attainable. 3 pounds a week is attainable. So breaking it down to that manageable increment. And then number 4 are actionable increments. So if you really want to lose just 3 pounds a week, you probably have to measure your food so you understand what portion size is. You have to eat every 2.5 hours. I know there's many different diets out there, so I won't go into it, but you probably need, every 2.5 hours having a small protein, having a small vegetable, some sort of that. And then you have to walk for a half hour a day and break it down as actionable increments. And then lastly is use that self-to-self measurement. Is if you eat a candy bar, you can't say, well, screw it, I'm not going to be able to do it. The next day, eat a half a candy bar, then a quarter of a candy bar, and just kind of slowly use that self-to-self measurement to get you to that next level. So when you reverse engineer it, right, you have the 5 steps there. So I think there's really 4 main categories that business owners need to think about. And one, I didn't necessarily put these in any order, but on here, number 1 is debt. Do you have debt? Do you not have debt? Do you want to get out of that debt? Number 2 is revenue. What are your revenue goals? So what do you want to grow to your revenue to? Because we're looking at what gets measured gets done. So we're looking at revenue. What do you want to grow your revenue to? Your expenses. Now look at your expenses and you want to compare them. Are they aligned to your industry or not? And then lastly, what would be a savings goal? Now I know a lot of business owners say, and I don't tell business owners to save and invest in the stock market. Invest in your own stock, in your own company, and grow that company. And really what I'm saying here a little bit is savings is kind of that rainy day fund for your business. That fund so when the market declines that you could jump into your industry and buy more, right? Or even that savings is we help people find that savings within their business by helping them reduce their taxes, by some of the things I talked about already. The biggest thing is our tax savings, 35% tax savings. For an average person, not for an average person, but for our average business owner who's $600,000, that we find $100,000 a year. You know, for a lady making 120, we found $15,000 in their business through tax savings. So we find the money. But so what gets measured gets done. Focus on, you know, your debt. You want to get out of debt. 2, what do you want to grow your revenue to? 3, where are your expenses at and where should they be? And then 4 is when, you know, how much do you want to put aside in savings in your business, and those 4 things. Then break it down to the second part is start with the end in mind. When do you want to be out of debt? When do you want to have this revenue? When do you want to have your expenses in line? And then when do you want to have your savings? Number 3, just work backwards, right? So when I say work backwards, the biggest thing you need to work backwards on is I don't think people measure enough. So if you're not having success in a year, you better measure quarterly. If you're not having success quarterly, you better measure monthly. If you're not having success monthly, you better measure weekly. If you're not having success weekly, you better measure daily. And not daily, you better measure hourly. So really, I think, you know, I shouldn't even say you're not having success. I mean, you know, one time I went golfing, and I was on a golf course, and one of the caddies said he was a caddy down at Augusta. And I said, what's the difference between, you know, some of those business owners on Augusta golf course and every other business owner just up here in this private club in Wisconsin? And he's like, those guys down there, they're never late. They're meticulous with their time. They're meticulous with everything that they do. And so when you really look at it and working backwards is you have to be meticulous all the way down to that second to maximize your value. So really you should work backwards. So what does debt, revenue, expenses, and savings look like on a yearly basis, a quarterly basis, monthly, weekly, and all the way back to daily? And then the fourth thing is, what are your actionable increments? So on debt, you know, I'm not going to spend too much time on getting out of debt. I told you about the good debt and bad debt. The one thing is, if you have debt, go to a snowball calculator online. It'll show you just how to get out of debt, how to position your debt, and what debt to pay off first. And if you put $50 or $100 or $1,000 more towards your debt, when you get out of debt. But I never want that to be the detriment of what are your actionable increments to grow revenue. You know. We think about that in our business daily. We have a 13-point plan, but really you got to think about your lead generation. What are your sales funnels? What is your marketing funnel? We want to make a certain amount of calls out of our office every day. We send a certain amount of paper newsletters out every month. So what are your actionable increments to drive your revenue, and really breaking that down? I'll share with you our 13-point plan here later on for our business consulting. Expenses. What are your expenses? So when you look at a pie chart, how should your expenses, simply break down overhead, employee cost, and then what profit should be to you, and then how do you kind of tweak that? And what are your actionable increments to drive that? If you just decrease your cost by 12% and increase your revenue by 20%, you soon have 60% more money going into your pocket as a business owner. So how do you kind of do that, and what are the actionable increments? And then simply as savings is, now it becomes easy to save, right? It kind of falls into place. So, but those are some actionable increments that could lead to savings, and then your savings. And then the fifth thing is self-to-self measurement. Most business owners never look at their numbers. They never look at these things. So, reviewing these, whether it be on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, but really no less than that. But really having that self-to-self measurement on these 4 categories to really drive your wealth and drive your business. So really, the biggest things I can say here is always your revenue and your expenses. Drive your revenue and get your expenses in line. Yeah, so let me break this down for you. So why I call it a family office is because we're going to look at every financial transaction you have. See, a buzzword out there is this outsourced CFO, and I agree with that. You need an outsourced CFO for your business, and really that outsourced CFO contains one component of our overall family office structure. And that's really our accounting and tax type services. See, most people go out there and they get a CPA and they're disenfranchised because CPAs are usually just historians. They record your numbers from the past. What'd you do last year? Let me put them in your tax return and do your taxes for you. What we want to do is provide accounting and tax services on a weekly and a monthly basis. So you know exactly where you stand, and we can provide real-time advice and tax advice. So you have a forward-looking tax plan and tax strategy for the year. So So instead of having that rear view CPA, we want to provide that accounting and tax and that outsourced type CFO model for you. The second thing we do is tax credit and merchant services. And I put these kind of together for just to make it simpler, but we do work opportunity tax credit. We have a liquor store hiring. They hire about 40 people a year, and we'll get them a $42,000 work opportunity tax credit. So it's a $1.5 million pre-tax business. We put $200,000 in tax savings back into the business. Now we put another $40,000 in work opportunity tax credit. So, just how do we kind of find those small things? Also, one of the big things is we either do merchant service audits or merchant service, we replace your merchant service account. So one lady was paying $75,000, we got her down to $35,000. So we saved her $60,000 in taxes, and then put that $40,000 back in her business. We found $100,000 for her in her business in profit. $2 million business, and she only had profits of $250,000 on that $2 million business. So now putting another $100,000 in there, that's pretty fantastic for her. We also do advanced tax and financial planning. So when you look at the ultra wealthy, as we talked about, they have people combing through those 75,000 pages of tax code. And so we look at under advanced tax planning, we look at a few things. We look at advanced business structures. How are you set up? I can't believe how many people are still filing as sole proprietors. You want to put money back in your pocket? Take your LLC or your sole proprietor and turn it into filing as an S corp. You'll save yourself probably a couple thousand, a few $1,000s in taxes. And so really, how are you structured? Or if you're already a pass-through entity, do we put a C corp next to it? Are there strategies that a C corp and a pass-through entity could work side by side? Typically there are. Depending on the level of income you have and the level of revenue. Create tax efficiencies. Everyone's familiar with kicking the can down the road through qualified accounts or 401ks and different things. We have ways that you don't have to kick the can down the road. You can actually get huge tax savings now and pay a reduced tax savings rate on the back end while the money comes out through different strategies, key man strategies. A big one that we're doing is a captive insurance company. So a $13 million pre-tax profit company can be self-insured. So they can put $2 million into this captive insurance company. So they get the tax deduction on their main business, and now they don't have to pay taxes up to $2 million in revenue per year for this new captive insurance company. So they're going to get close to a $600,000, $700,000 tax savings right there, right? Even more. Wealth building strategies. So we'll do financial projections. We do self-directed IRAs. We have a gentleman wanted to buy another building, and he said, should I? And so he could take his current income and pay taxes and buy the building, or we could do a self-directed IRA, buy that in his IRA, and then get him tax savings this year. Have a couple $100,000 tax swing for him this year, just by doing it properly. Legacy, business succession planning. How do you make sure your money lasts for this generation and generations to come? And how do you create generational wealth? So we have the Rockefeller method we use. We do some business financing, mergers, acquisition, mezz financing, bank financing, private equity. We're raising money. We raised money for a men's hair salon recently to open up another salon, another location. We raised money for a really cool cyber security, for cloud security business. A diesel filter company increases the life of an engine. So we're raising money for different firms out there. And then our business consulting. We do profit consulting. We've already talked about that, so I don't want to go into that. But our sales and revenue and business optimization, I know it's about building wealth. Number way you can build wealth, grow your revenue. Buy other companies, build your company. And so really we have our business optimization strategies here. I wrote a book called Story Selling. So you want to, are you going out with the right message? What's your lead gen? When you look at your lead gen, do you have a sales funnel and a marketing funnel? They're different. Sales funnels are ready now. You 3, 4, 5-step process, get them to pay you. Marketing funnel are those people you got to nurture. How do you maximize your conversions? Maximize sales engagements. Content education out there, right? Do people, we are the best kept secret out there. So, we take them through your referral strategy. I always, people say they get referrals, but do they have a strategy to follow up on it? So really is, putting all this together is how do we look at your business and just help you kind of grow that overall pie for yourself and do it strategically. And so that's really what we do. And so you can go out there, and I encourage you to do some of the things and do the work that we just talked about. But also, you know, you're paying for tax and accounting services out there, so why not have a done-for-you model? And that's really what we tried to do, is bring a done-for-you model to help grow that overall pie of a business and grow what a business owner gets to keep through all these types of tax savings, accounting, financial strategies, and business optimization strategy. You know, you're exactly right. And some of the things that you talked about there for a business owner is, I was talking about this today with my team, is that when business owners, we start out, we're grinding, and we're doing everything ourselves, literally everything ourselves. Our taxes, our accounting, our sales, our service, we're doing everything. And then we get comfortable though. We get up, we ramp up, and I saw this the first day, I think I was a financial advisor, is we ramp up to about $120,000. For whatever reason, that seems like a sweet spot. It was 20 years ago, and it seems like a sweet spot still for a lot of people. We ramp up to 120,000, and then we hold on so tightly, but we don't have a business because it's just us doing everything. So here we are at 120,000. We're strapped for time. People are complaining about us, but we got 120 grand, and we have a good lifestyle. We're probably taking a little more vacations than we need to even. Not saying you shouldn't take vacations, just saying what I see out there. And we're so afraid to hire somebody else, or so afraid because we don't want to lose this $120,000 lifestyle. And we're so afraid to hire somebody else. We're so afraid to outsource certain things that we can never grow beyond it. And it is this hockey stick at 120, and it levels off. And the way to do that is, how do you figure out and silo these different components? And even like, if you think about yourself as a business, you need a CFO, you need a CMO, you need a CSO, right? You need whatever different structures. And so if you can actually put those there, and therefore you can wear those different hats, but then you can outsource or hire in those components when you need it, you will accelerate your business. And so one of the things here is, what's different about what we're talking about here is, when you go to invest and you go to earn 5 or 10%, that's not a great proposition for people. You know, I'm not saying that, even, great, you're worth $1 million or 10 million. The average, the average business owner doesn't have a lot of money in the stock market, because why they went from 0 to $1 million or 2 million or 10 million. Why would I put that money in the stock market to get 5%? And so what I'm saying is that you have to change your idea. A lot of times as a business owner, from being just that business operator to, how do I become that business owner? And everything I'm telling you today, I don't want you to get 5% growth. I don't want you to get 10% growth. Write this word down. You need geometric growth in your business. And that's why we do it. That's why I quit in the corporate world. I'm sure that's somewhat, why everyone quits, is they want to give more, they want to be more. And how do you give more? How do you be more? And how do you create that geometric growth? So, some of the things that we talked about today, just to add, is that if you want to grow your income by 3% a year, it's going to take you 20 years compounded just to even double your income, 27 years, right? Just to double your income. Now, what we're talking about is, how do you create that geometric growth? Now, fortunately, in the corporate world, I was able to go from, I think I made 30,000 to 65 or 90 to 150 to 250, and it kept going. And even and what I'm talking about is there from, I think, from 22 to 26, I started at 30,000 and got to 250,000 really fast. And so how do you do that with your business? And so you don't want just small growth, small incremental growth. You want to have small incremental growth in all these little areas, so you create a geometric lift. I wish I did. One of my business coaches got me thinking this way. And so I don't know if he said it or if I stole it from him. But case in point, he keeps all his money in cash. It's a different business model. We can talk about it. People hire me and hire us and do some things. It's way beyond scope here. He keeps his money in cash, and the reason why is his first business went from 0 to 60 million within 3 years. So he's like, why am I going to put my money somewhere that's going to get 5 or 8%? I'll just go do that 0 to 60 million again without any money. So it's a change in mindset of ultimately of creating that abundant wealth that we're talking about. It's really a different mindset. And his mindset is creating that geometric growth where an entrepreneur, I think he claims, from going from investing $850 and taking that to 300 million, I think is really what the company was worth. But so how do you have that mentality versus how do I hold on to my 120 grand and create a very average company that most of my clients aren't going to be happy because I can't service them the way they need. Well, you know, it's something interesting you just said right there. So we have 3 partners. Top line revenue is $10 million in their business. Their net to each of them is right around $1 million. So doing really, really well. And we took over from their old CPA firm, and they had a complicated structure, which I understand the structure and why they did it. But the other CPA firm could not understand the structure or the dynamic way the money was flowing, and they were overpaying in taxes. Regardless of anything that I can share with you here, just by me going in there and understanding why they were paying tax at the top corporate level when these other corporations owned it and that they were pass-throughs, blah, 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 it didn't make sense. And so, and they were incorporated in Illinois. The one guy was paying $30,000 in taxes when he didn't have to, so we reincorporated them in a different state so they don't have to pay that tax. So we saved the one guy $30,000. We saved him on state taxes. And this is a reputable CPA firm. It's a big CPA firm. They're almost like a horse with blinders on it, where they're just caught down in the weeds and just couldn't see the picture of how business was actually being done. And so, let alone we were able to save each one of them 35% on their taxes, just by sharing, just restructuring, incorporating them in another state, where to give the one guy another $30,000 check. So it's just the CPA, for whatever reason, is not analyzing it that way. They're just doing the taxes of the entity. You give them your books. They take your books. They put them into your tax return. And you say, how do I pay lower taxes? They say, well, you can't. And you try to give them more write-offs. And that's what happens every year. There's no proactive strategy to see in the whole picture. And I would say the difference here is that, a CPA, where they're chunked down in the details, we can get back up to the big picture. One of my communication strategies are, seeing the forest through the trees, if you will. So, CPAs are just among the trees. I always say, if you're lost among the trees, how do you get out? The joke I always say, ask my wife and then go the other way. She's 100% always goes the opposite way. She doesn't like when I tell that joke. Don't tell her I told that. No, she'll think it's funny. But ultimately, if you're down in the weeds, you can't get out, and that's a CPA. And so by us and our strategy is that we take a look and we see how the whole forest is laid out, so you could then navigate the tax plan, the tax code, and really navigate your business, grow your revenue, and make sure that all the accounting and taxes are in the right place. Awesome. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Axie, say I can.
I can.
Say I must.
I must.
Say I am.
I am.
Say Axie Unstoppable.
Example.